Bola Adebayo strode through the gleaming lobby of his corporate headquarters, chest puffed out with unbridled pride. At only 35 years old, he was already one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in all of Nigeria. His telecom company, Bolad, had revolutionized mobile communications across the continent, making Bola a multi-billionaire in just over a decade. Peering out from behind his designer sunglasses, he smirked at the fawning receptionists and security guards who fell over themselves to greet him. Good morning, Mr. Adebayo. You're looking exceptionally prosperous today, sir. Bola scoffed at their obvious brown nosing as he sauntered into the spotless marble lobby. Of course, he looked prosperous. He was richer than entire nations, for God's sake. These peasants should be kissing the very ground he walked upon. As the high-speed elevator whisked him to the opulent penthouse suite, Bola reflected proudly on his stunning rise to the pinnacle of Nigeria's elite. He'd started out with nothing more than a ramshackle electronics repair shop in the Lagos slums, but his ferocious work ethic and predatory business savvy had propelled him into the uppermost stratosphere of wealth and power. The doors parted, and Bola swaggered into his lavish corner office, waving dismissively at the team of obsequious assistants, waiting with their memorandums and reports. Whatever it is, it can wait. I'm far too important for your petty babbling this morning. He plopped down into his supple leather chair and propped his feet up on the rosewood desk, surveying his domain. The 270-degree wall of windows presented an unparalleled vista of Lagos's skyline shimmering in the morning light. Below him, a ceaseless parade of minuscule cars and pedestrians filled the bustling streets like ants marching to their meaningless jobs and meaningless lives. As Bola stared down condescendingly, he sneered at the thought of his impoverished roots amongst those very same swarming masses. That desperate existence seemed like distant myth now. He was a god compared to those worthless peasants scrabbling in the dirt. Just then, his latest girlfriend, Amina, swept into the office wearing a form-fitting white power suit that clung to her curves. At only 18 years old, the former Miss Nigeria was half Bola's age and a perpetual object of envy among his peers. Darling, there's an emergency board meeting in 20 minutes that I really think you should attend, she said, leaning over the desk to offer a tantalizing glimpse of her ample cleavage. Bola shrugged indifferently and gestured for her to come closer. As Amina bent over further, he seized a handful of her hair and pulled her into a long, aggressive kiss. I'll attend your silly meeting briefly, just to keep the old fools in line, he growled in her ear. But first, let's have a preview of what's coming for dessert tonight. Amina dutifully obliged, sinking to her knees before her wealthy and powerful boyfriend. Bola grinned with satisfaction. This was what true success and status afforded a man like him: respect, power, delicious submission from gorgeous women. Oftentimes, in between screaming matches and casual beating, Bola found himself ruminating on how unbelievably perfect his life had turned out. An endless stream of wealth, accolades, luxuries, and mistresses all flowed to him simply by virtue of his supreme self worth and dominance. He was living proof that a real man could seize the world by the throat and bend it to his will through sheer force and utter refusal to ever accept failure. Lesser beings like his parents, cousins, and old childhood friends were meant to be crushed underfoot on his inevitable path to glory. Bola would never forget the first time he returned to his old Mushin neighborhood after making his first million. While the old aunties and uncle marveled at his flashy suit and chunky gold jewelry, the local hoodlums tried to intimidate and shake him down like they always did. Bola simply chuckled and fanned out a massive wad of fresh 1,000 naira notes before their stunned eyes. I've got more money in my pockets than the lot of you urchins will ever see, he roared at them. My very turds are worth more than you scum could ever imagine. From that point onward, Bola adopted an openly disdainful view of the lower classes. He was born to rule, born to seize power, born to dominate all who failed to meet his lofty vision of success. Respect from the subordinates was neither required nor desired, only total obeisance and acknowledgement of his material supremacy. The years marched on, and Bola's empire continued its meteoric ascent. His companies devoured or crushed their competition through brute force and manipulation of government regulations. His sprawling estates, jets, and stable of luxury cars became the envy of magazines and social media feeds across the continent. Only one thing was missing from making Bola's gilded life complete: heir to build a dynastic legacy worthy of his greatness. At the age of 40, he finally decided to take a wife and start a family to carry on his bloodline of winners. He selected Amina, already renowned as one of the world's most beautiful women, to be his spouse and vessel for passing on his supreme genes. When her pregnancy was announced, he immediately began boasting to the press about the incredible, ultra accomplished sons he would undoubtedly produce. My boys will be born champions, just like their father, alpha offspring destined for incredible riches and power. Amina dutifully gave birth to not two, but three children, twin sons, Adesina and Ayokunmi, and a daughter named Fehintola, who arrived 2 years later. Bola felt a surging sense of paternal pride at his genetic proliferation as he gazed upon the trio of infants, until the doctors delivered their devastating diagnosis. Adesina was mentally impaired and barely responsive. At best, he would remain at the cognitive level of a young child for the duration of his life. Ayokunmi had sustained severe oxygen deprivation during a complicated delivery, leaving him physically paralyzed with only limited use of his arms. Only Fehintola seemed free of the afflictions plaguing her older brothers. In one fell swoop, Bola's dreams of siring a successive generation of alpha elite offspring were cruelly shattered. What followed was an explosive tantrum, the likes of which his wives and servants had never witnessed. Bola raved and ranted for hours, smashing furniture and leaving holes in the drywall with his fists. How dare the heavens punish Bola Adebayo like this? Can the universe not recognize generational wealth and power when it is handed down? I am meant to produce heirs worthy of continuing my glorious legacy, not drooling, brain dead invalids. This is an outrageous cosmic injustice. His raging soon coalesced into a vicious, petty misanthropy directed squarely at Adesina and Ayokunmi. Bola wanted nothing to do with the boys and refused all attempts to include them in his family life. The disfigured sons represented a grotesque failure of his bloodline that sickened him to his core. While doting endlessly on their sister Fehintola and proclaiming her future brilliance, Adesina and Ayokunmi were kept apart from Bola in its isolated wings of the family compound. The best specialists and therapists from around the world were employed to help the boys reach their full potential, but always kept out of Bola's sight and mind. Occasionally, he would drunkenly stumble into their quarters in the dead of night and scream verbal abuse at the helpless brothers. I should have had you mongrels drowned at birth, like the unwanted animals you are. You are utter wastes of my perfect DNA. Then, as quickly as he appeared, Bola would vanish in a cloud of spittle and outraged tears, leaving his poor sons traumatized and bewildered by their father's hatred. Their caretakers worked tirelessly to provide the unconditional love and acceptance that Bola so violently rejected. Moreover, Bola's relationship with his wife deteriorated. He blamed her often for contributing to his woes. Amina kept enduring the abusive relationship until Bola decided to banish her from his mansion after accusing her of infidelity, and she was only allowed to see her children once in a while. For the next 8 years, the mighty Adebayo family soldiered on as an increasingly fractured and unstable unit. Fehintola grew into a bright, beautiful, and cheerful child, totally beloved by her parents, and Bola in particular. He doted on her endlessly and proclaimed her the official heir to his vast business empire at every turn. But that all changed the night of Fehintola's 10th birthday pool party. She had begged Bola to let her brothers attend for the first time ever, to integrate them and acknowledge their presence as part of the family. Begrudgingly and against his better judgment, Bola allowed Adesina and Ayokunmi to join the festivities. In a tragic turn of events, overworked staff failed to notice Adesina wandering too close to the deep end of the pool in his haze of mental impairment. He slipped beneath the surface and panicked, unable to call for help or keep himself afloat. By the time he was finally spotted and pulled to safety, precious minutes had elapsed without oxygen flow. Adesina was rushed to the hospital clinging to life, only to be declared brain dead a day later. Bola was utterly shattered, but not for the reasons one might expect. Upon receiving the heartbreaking news, he flew into an incoherent rage at the loss of his perfect daughter's joyous celebration being ruined. Fehintola herself meant relatively little in Bola's eyes. What mattered was that her special day and position of primacy in the family had been soiled by Adesina's pathetic demise. This is all that idiot boy's fault. He ruined everything, just like he was born to do. I never wanted him here in the first place. Grief soon morphed into an unending torrent of abuse and degradation inflicted upon Ayokunmi, the remaining disabled son Bola held responsible for spoiling his plans. He forbade any mention of Adesina's name and barred mourners from attending his quiet burial. It was as if Adesina had never existed, his death rendered meaningless by Bola's fractured, narcissistic view of self importance. For poor Ayokunmi, daily life became a never-ending hellscape of cruelty and neglect at his father's hands. Bola would not allow his personal staff to bathe, feed, or render any physical care to the paralyzed boy whatsoever. The most basic human dignities were viciously withheld while Bola taunted him mercilessly. Look at you, you little urchin, nothing but a slobbering wretch, soon to follow your imbecile brother into the abyss. The years of hatred, stress, and excess exacted a ruinous toll on Bola's physical form. His rampaging blood pressure rose to lethal levels, poisoning his veins like thick sludge with each sadistic outburst against poor Ayokunmi. Yet Bola remained defiantly blind to the internal tempest brewing within his bloated corporeal vessel. Despite doctors' grave warnings about imminent stroke and organ failure, the arrogant billionaire waved away their admonishments like oxen flies. I am Bola Adebayo, scourge of the business world. He would roar with bloody flecks of spittle. No mere mortal affliction threatens one such as I. But the cold indifference of fate cared not for Bola's hubris and hollow boastings. After reviewing a tedious telecom merger one afternoon, a thunderbolt of hypertensive hemorrhaging detonated within his skull. The mighty potentate and patriarch of the Adebayo dynasty crumpled to the marble floors, temporarily paralyzed on the left side as a tsunami of blood inundated his brain. By the time his security team discovered Bola lying in a puddle of his own vomitus, he was already an empty husk. For 5 long years, Bola lingered in a comatose vegetative state at an exclusive medical facility as teams of caretakers attended to his most basic, undignified needs. Son Ayokunmi and Fehintola, now a sullen teenager scarred by her father's monstrosities, kept watchful bedside vigils through those final anguished days and nights. Ironically, it was Bola's most hated offspring who stood by him until the bitter end, while his empire of ill gotten riches crumbled to dust without its sneering architect. Early one morning, just after the first rays of dawn peeked over the Lagos skyline, Bola's breathing mass clouded with a final milky exhalation. Those few haunting words drained from his lips in a seething, garbled rasp. Forgive, arrogant, fool. No tears were shed, no mourners descended. Bola Adebayo's unrepentant life ebbed away in disgrace and contempt. Alone in a sterile room, ignored by the society he once terrorized, the fearmonger met his annihilated end. In a strange mercy, Bola's benighted karmic sins were not visited upon the inheritors of his fortune. Feintola and her brother Ayokunmi banded together, dissolving their disgraced father's bloated corporate empire and laundering its billions through a worldwide chain of humanitarian centers and foundations. The Adebayo Centers for Special Needs Children sprang up from Lagos to Kinshasa, providing the comprehensive care and unconditional love so venomously denied by their founder. At the original flagship campus in Lagos, a bronze statue of a laughing young Adesina twirls joyfully, welcoming all who enter with open arms of childlike embrace. An inscription chiseled at the base of the monument serves as a subtle rebuke to Bola's toxic vanity. May the dreams of the forgotten outshine the pride of kings. In death, Bola Adebayo's cruelty towards his disabled sons was redeemed by the shining altruism manifested by their surviving successors. No longer could his bile soaked footprints scar the earth.